Eating meat is becoming less and less attractive.
That's the moment where you're on the journey already. We don't need like one or two perfect vegans. We need millions of people reducing their intake.
It feels somehow wrong.
Our goal is to reach those omnivores, those flexitarians, right?
I am doing it less and less. I'm actually eating almost no red meat anymore.
Less meat is less carbon intensive.
I don't want to give up meat.
If you're not ready, just eat less.
English television presenter Davina McCall spoke about her feelings around eating meat and how that is shifting over time on a recent episode of a podcast, Begin Again. Let's go to the clip.
Eating meat is becoming less and less attractive. And it feels somehow wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm actually eating almost no red meat anymore. And I was like, but it's happening by osmosis. It's the weirdest thing. I'm frightened of saying I am
But that's why you don't
vegetarian
have
or
to.
vegan. But I am doing it less and less and enjoying it less and less. A bit like Sean.
Yeah.
I might have a meal and eat some chicken, and it's somehow afterwards it's like, doesn't sit right. Really interesting. I don't know why. I don't want to give up meat.
Yeah, I don't know, Shabnam, are you familiar with this TV presenter? I feel like she's the best of UK TV. Like, she goes way back. She's done Big Brother. She's done loads of stuff when I was a kid.
I have no idea of who she is. I'm sorry.
She's an English treasure.
I agree.
She seems like she really likes her meat, though. She doesn't want to give it up.
It is interesting, isn't it? But I feel like it's kind of like a vegan moment, isn't it? People start to have this feeling and it's in the back of their mind and they can't quite pinpoint what it is. And they're like, but I really like it. Do I really want to give it up? Do I have to give it up? That's the moment, in my opinion, where you're on the journey already.
I think she said no red meat, and that's sort of the most culturally acceptable way of sort of coming out of the closet these days as a flexitarian. You know, a few years ago when vegan was trending more, people would say, I'm going on the vegan diet, I'm dabbling in a bit of vegan or plant-based eating. But I feel like the whole, I'm not having any red meat at the moment, that's it, flexitarian.
I guess because the thing is, people know now that it's much more widely talked about that red meat is categorized as a carcinogen. So I think because that is a bit more talked about, people are like, well, if I cut out that one, then maybe I can keep the rest. Please. What do you two think about the term vegan? Because she does bring it up, and it is a point that I get like sort of a lot of questions about. Apparently in research with like vegan products, when they're looking at marketing and all this kind of stuff, if they have the word vegan on it, they sell a lot less than if they put plant-based or plant-forward or any other sort of terminology that avoids the word vegan. What do you two think?
According to the World Resources Institute, using terms like vegan, meatless, vegetarian, healthy, low-fat can signal that a dish can actually be less indulgent, less satisfying, less delicious. And frankly, people are going to think that it's actually a sacrifice to eat it. In our work at GBD, what we've discovered is that this can actually reduce sales by 76%. That's a massive amount. Our strategy in terms of nudge science is just, yes, it's
Nudge
plant
theory. Nudge theory, loving it.
Nudge theory, right? It's like plant forward eating. It's plant-based. And even then, putting that in the title is unnecessary. Using symbols like a leaf is more impactful because our goal is to reach those omnivores, those flexitarians, right? For example, okay, let's just say you see celiac bowl on your menu. You're not going to choose it unless you are gluten-free or you have some sort of gluten intolerance, right? But if you see Thai peanut rice noodle bowl, now you just may order it because it sounds delicious. And the same thing goes for the terms vegan and vegetarian, right? No need to put it there. Call it something delicious.
So are you saying that default should be plant-based, and this is the language we should use when advocating for more plant-based pattern of eating now?
Absolutely. And when we think about things about like plant-based defaults, it's just simply switching the norm, right? Oftentimes, people are having to request a vegetarian or a gluten-free meal, right? Because the default is, hey, we're serving meat at this wedding. Would you like to opt for a vegan and vegetarian meal? But what if we swapped the default? We're offering delicious plant-forward meals by default. Let us know if you'd opt for the chicken instead. And we find in our work at Greener by Default that immediately impacts the take rate and increase of plant-based foods.
Plant forward, is that what you use in the advocacy and meetings and stuff?
It depends
Sounds
on
kind
the
of
client.
sexy.
Plant forward. Plant forward is usually the most acceptable way to get it in the door. Yeah. And like people think that like plant-based defaults are just such a corrupt way to nudge people to like their behavior, but we do it in so many ways in the way we like commercialize and incentivize people. Like, for example, people think that like organ donation on your driver's license is a personal choice. But I'm going to tell you this, defaults have a huge impact in that. For example, in countries where you are by default not an organ donor, only 30% of people opt in to be an organ donor. But in countries where you are default an organ donor, there's almost 100% acceptance rate of being an organ donor.
That's so interesting.
It makes sense psychologically, right?
The obstacle of opting out is just too much for the flexitarian to want to do. Creating that one-step barrier is all we need to start shifting behavior towards more plant-based decisions.
Okay, but so we posted an article on Plant-Based News about a university changing their whole campus food to plant-based, Klaus. I think it was a couple of days ago. And so I've been responding to the comments, and the comments are like, how dare you force your views on someone else? Why should we have to have that? Just let everybody eat what they want to eat. Like, what do you think about that?
That right there is not a plant-based default. That's a plant-based dining hall. A plant-based default still gives people the option to opt into meat and dairy. It is just not the default choice. So there shouldn't be pushback if diners are still given the option to get what they want.
I mean, they are doing it. The poster shows them holding up a poster that says, we've gone plant-based to combat the climate crisis. Like, it's specifically for climate reasons. But do you think if they were just trying to get more people to eat less meat, it would have been better to be like, the default is plant-based, but you can add?
Absolutely. I mean, that's just what we find in our work. And less meat is less carbon intensive. And so is there a way that we can just manipulate the food service environment to where that a majority, over 60% of what is offered is plant-based comparatively to the remainder 40%? That is where we start to see really big sustainability impacts. That's what the World Resources Institute says. If we can shift to having more ratios of 60% plant-based to 40% meat and dairy, we can start to offset those carbon footprints. Yes, in a perfect world, in ahimsa, no harm, would I love to see this? Yeah, of course I would. But if I want to have less pushback from my community who may not actually think or resonate with me, including things on the menu that they like is important.
Yeah, I fully agree. I did a post before once that was like, we don't need like one or two perfect vegans. We need millions of people doing things imperfectly, reducing and all this kind of stuff. Because I think if we're thinking about the climate crisis, the world as a whole, the impact on animals, we need so many people reducing their intake. And also perfectionism, it doesn't, being perfect does not exist. We're not in a vegan world, like you said. We wish we were, but we're in a capitalistic system that drives for profit over everything. And it's not vegan. So we have to try and encourage people, like you said, give them ways to reduce so that they can start to become part of the movement. And maybe eventually over time, we'll see a lot more people who kind of basically are vegan, but they just don't say it, like what Davina was saying. She's like, I don't really want to use the label, but...
So true, so true. I think she's actually suffered recently from a tumor that was removed from her brain. And so I think this is one of the reasons that she's become more conscious in terms of eating habits. When you are afflicted by a certain health condition or you have to have an operation, it shows that people making that choice towards plant-based eating, and the information must be out there supporting that, which is only a good thing.
To people like Davina, like, it's not, if you're not ready, that's okay. It's okay. Just eat less.